everyone. My name is Adrienne Garland, and welcome to Sugar Coated. Sugar Coated is a podcast that was born from the notion that for far too long, women and other people who inside felt like they just didn't fit in maybe small or even large ways, had to sugarcoat their words, their style, or in general, their way of showing up in the world. This podcast started out as a dedication to women leaders. You see, I wanted to shine the light on all the incredible work that women do and how they're making an impact. And I still do. But I realized that a key reason that women have struggled, in my opinion, is that they've had to conform to certain cultural norms and ideals, which are inherently designed to keep those outside of the norm from standing out. This has prevented more women from being recognized as the powerful leaders that we truly are. Join me, Adrienne Garland, the CEO and founder of She Leads Media, each week as I dive into raw conversations with some remarkable, badass women that will help you to strip away your sugar coat and go in the direction of your incredible dreams. Hey everyone, this is Adrienne Garland, and welcome to Sugar Coated. I'm so excited to welcome my incredible guest today. Her name is Julianna Garibay-Sparacio, and I've known Julie for quite some time. I met her in a professional setting where we worked together at a local cable company in New York. And through that, we became great friends, and we have been in and out of each other's orbit professionally for the last 20 years. And we've been in each other's lives as friends for that time too. So I'm so excited to open up this conversation, which we all know will not be sugar-coated. There is no bullshit on our podcast. But I'm excited to welcome Julianna to the podcast today. So hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great, here by myself. We're recording this in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. Right. As good as we can possibly be. But I'm so excited that you're here today because we were together the other day pushing each other to new heights as we normally do, and that we've done really ever since we, met each other. But right. The conversation that we had the other day was so powerful, and I wish that we could have turned the mic on the other day, but it's why I wanted to get you here on the podcast, because I think that you have so much to share, and I think that what you are doing now can be so inspiring to so many people, and I just wanted to, have a conversation. So why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about yourself to give everybody some context, and then we can get into our no bullshit conversation.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, yeah.
About me. Well, one thing you'll know is I'm originally from Chicago. I come from a Spanish background as well as Irish. And I say that because one of the things I wanted to talk about today is just what's going on in the world culturally. I have a great, great passion for cultures and have steered my career in that direction all the way up until now, whether I was working for a company or on my own. I just think there's so much to say and talk about cultures. And having come from a Hispanic American background and growing up in the suburbs of Chicago and the city of Chicago, and now being here in New York for so many years, over 20 years, I've seen so much, as I said, have led the career that way, and just think that, there's just so much going on in the world. And especially now that coronavirus has happened, our political administrations and what's happening there in the year 2000, I think now's the kind of really the time to talk about cultures, why people come from different countries, what are they seeking, why did they immigrate, what kind of lives are they trying to build, and how do Americans resonate with that? So that's something that you and I talk about all the time, and there's just so much to say. I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, I know. And I agree. I think it's so important now to kind of have that world view of people. And yeah, maybe look at what their differences are. There's so many things that are so interesting with their art and their architecture and the foods and all of that. And it can be scary, I think, to some people too. And especially when something like this, breaks out and we're literally
Hmm.
closing borders and we're closing
Hmm.
off from other people. We can't be afraid. And whenever you and I talk, you always talk so passionately about, even though people have all of these seeming differences, that, you know, underneath it all, we're all human beings. And I
Hmm.
find that to be so interesting and relevant, because you can appreciate all of the differences and all of the beauty and the art and everything. But there are people that are afraid of those differences. So why don't you talk a little bit, because I know that we've talked about this a lot. Why don't you talk about where you are now, because I know that you're in a transitory space
Hmm.
or a place of transition, and how throughout your whole entire career and life, even though you've moved through all of these things, that there's been this draw to global cultures and people.
Yeah, and I think that started ever since I was very, very little. I grew up for a period of time with my grandmother who did not speak English in Chicago. And I think that's more or less where the interest began. And so throughout my life, all of the jobs that I've taken along the way, whether in Chicago or New York, it's I've worked for the most part in advertising and marketing, and have worked on many global accounts working on, at the time back in the day, it was just really Hispanic marketing or African American, maybe some Asian, and have delved into those cultures as well as many, many more throughout the career on the marketing and product side, just really trying to understand what kind of products are ethnicities driven to and why. And how do you specifically speak to those cultures? So many today refer to that as the multicultural strategy. But I've done that for many years, and at one point did go out on my own and represented a lot of TV networks looking to come to the U.S., and that was quite interesting. And then from there, went back into corporate to continue the journey of developing cultural products. And then now in this transitionary stage, I feel like it's time to really share a lot of that knowledge with others, because over the years, I felt that many brands struggled to wrap their arms around how to take this on. I mean, especially being in here in New York, that it's just, a multitude of cultures live in New York. And what I found over the years is very little number of brands have actively learned how to address those cultures in order to grow their business. So I feel like it's time to take all the knowledge that I have and go out on my own once again, but in a very different way that's going to be more voice driven in terms of writing a book, doing podcasts, trying to get speaking engagements out there to really talk to brands on a much broader level versus one company at a time, and to really help them understand, how do you talk to a Russian versus somebody who's Japanese versus somebody who comes from Italy versus somebody who's from a South Asian country, and what does that mean, and how do you do that economically? How do you save money? I mean, it's just interesting in terms of what I've learned over the years, that you really do have to dive into each very differently, and working in, as you know, the cable industry, it's more about the masses and maybe touching upon some of these groups. And I completely understand why. I mean, there's only so many dollars. You have to reach the masses. It's nearly impossible to grab all these different groups. And yes, there's commonalities across the board, but I think instead of just going down the road of translation, you and I've talked many times about how it's really about transcreation, creating a message that's driven from beyond just translating, really diving into the cultures and understanding, why does someone eat the foods they eat? Why do they purchase what they purchase? Why are the cultures so important here in the US? And, I've been thinking about how to do that moving forward, just in relation to everything that's happening right now. The world is basically shutting down,
Yeah.
and God knows, what kind of impact this is going to have, right? Just in terms of, is our current administration or any future administration going to shut the borders on certain countries because of fear? Are we ultimately going to work together as a result of coronavirus, regardless of where it started? It could start somewhere else, the next time and be more deadly.
Yeah.
Why do these things happen? Is it tied to cultures and how people go about their daily lives, and how do viruses spread? Is it within the foods? Is it related to animals? I have no freaking idea, but it's just another mark in the cultural understanding of how do we address all this. Right now everybody's talking about containment, and that's why we're all secluded within our homes. But once this is over, and let's say we do find a vaccine, where do we go from here? How do we deal with somebody like China, whom we believe this is where this all started, and it's because of whatever they might have done. How do we dive into that more deeply and become partners in helping not only better understand what that culture does and why, but what kind of impact could it have on the rest of the world,
Yeah.
and has,
Yeah.
and is it fair? Should we put stricter rules in place based on these cultural differences? Is it fair that the whole world is being blown up because of something that happened in one country?
There's so many different
Yeah.
layers of that conversation too, because I just keep thinking in my head that we have this world that is truly a global world, and that has opened up so many opportunities for people, for companies to do borderless business, right? And that has been such a good thing. Airlines fly everywhere. It's so easy to do business with countries just around the globe. At the same time, that opens up what we're seeing. These pathways aren't just pathways that provide goods and services or information. They're also pathways that can open negative things up, and we're seeing it right now. But I think a place that people go to in their minds is they see, why did we do that? Those people are different than we are. They live and do things in a different way. And look, they're the ones that cause the harm, and it creates all of this fear in people. So, and I understand that 100%. I mean, when you hear some of the stories about these wet markets and people eating bats and, cross species contamination and all of this kind of stuff, it is freaking scary as hell. And we grew up in, the United States, and where you and I grew up, no one was eating bats. So we don't get it. But why are people eating bats? And let's go back to that source. Is it because of tastes, just because people want to do it? Or is it out of necessity? Like, these people are starving and they're literally going to eat anything that they can catch. And if that's the problem, can't we help solve that issue rather than blaming people for eating bats? Why can't we open up the food supply chains and get people healthy things that aren't going to, have this cross-species contamination or whatever it is? So I think that that's why some of the stuff that you're doing is so important, because it's that deep core understanding of who people are and why they do the things that they do that can really help to solve problems.
And also, how do we understand? I mean, do we know that the Chinese are eating bats, or do we just know that they may have come in contact with them? I mean, there's just so much going on in the world that with fake news, and the media stirring up frenzies. Maybe we find out that's not the case.
Right.
Maybe it's just a matter of they live near bats and there's viruses that can be exposed in some way or another. But what
Right.
we do know is it's having a terrible impact on the rest of the world, all the way down to you and I and our children, having to be secluded within the home, not going to school, learning a different way, which opens up positive and negatives. But I think, right now is not the time to, really dive into the why. Eventually it will be. But to your point, how do we partner to better understand why these things happen and how to avoid them, or at least better understand them so that we can contain whatever it is that has been done or happened, doesn't reach the far corners of the world.
Yeah.
It's just the unknown right now. But interestingly, as you and I talk about, is also, as a result of all this, what we can call negative stuff that's happened, how do we learn from it? Not just from a cultural standpoint, but just a day-to-day life standpoint.
Mm.
Will more and more colleges learn that online isn't such a bad thing, and should it be a better route to go to save money? For some people, let's say, for example,
Yeah.
are we helping climate change because we're not driving all over the place? Or are we damaging it because we're using more heat in our homes right now? I don't know. There's so many unknowns.
Oh my God.
But it's interesting to me how different countries have been affected differently, right? Spain and Italy, the numbers just keep rising and rising. Different areas of our own country, a lot of whys, a lot of unknowns. But this is the kind of stuff that I would like to be a part of, as I start transitioning and really understanding on a much deeper level, eventually getting back to traveling and living within these cultures so that I could really have a proper voice in terms of, what are they really doing? I think many of us should try to avoid fear, go back to vacationing, go back to learning and loving things that we do want to see and know about.
Mm.
Because I do believe there's more good than there is bad. I mean, we will overcome this. We've overcome other flus, the swine flu, the SARS, everything else. We've seemed to figure it out. So I don't doubt our country and our world for being able to solve the problems. It's just going to take a little while. But
Yeah.
but now today, it's interesting to me how, what can we do in the meantime while we are secluded, right?
Yeah. Like knowing that that's the next chapter in your career, I think that it can take the form of, working with a company, working on your own. I think, all doors are sort of open for you, but how do you see that being when this is all said and done? I mean, it's a crapshoot. It's anybody's guess, but how are you going to sort of make your impact in this post coronavirus world?
Right. Well, the first thing we don't know, is it ever going to go away? And if it does go away, will it come back? So I think there's going to be a tendency to play it safe for a while, on
Yeah.
my end. But there's a lot of resources out there, of course, in terms of what you can read about cultures and what you can learn. And, I know enough people from all different places and corners of the world. I think I would start by simply, continuing my blogging, maybe doing something what you're doing, and starting to talk to different cultures and getting the different perspectives.
Yeah.
I do believe that, the more brains we put together on this, the more we'll understand, because there's differences, but there's commonalities. So I think, during the quiet time, I'm going to do my own amount of research and just, better learn, better understand beyond just, how to reach a culture. I think we almost are ahead of ourselves and need to take a step back and say, what do I really know? How much more do I need to know about the Chinese versus Brazilians versus, what Spaniards do,
Yeah.
in a time like this, in a time of crisis,
Yeah.
so it's just reading everything you can possibly get your hands on, be extraordinarily curious, so that we can all better understand. And I hope this year to put a lot of content out into the world to share those learnings so
Yeah.
that we can help alleviate some of the fear, because I too have fear. I have fear for my children. Nobody wants to touch anything. Everybody wants to try to get their hands on sanitizers. I mean, I don't want to live that way. I don't want to live in constant fear and, let somebody walking down the road saying, oh my gosh, they're Chinese. What are they doing and where do they come from? I don't
Yeah.
think that it's going to behoove us to be talking and thinking that way. So
Yeah.
if there's anything that I can do to help kind of alleviate based on facts and research, that's really, where I want to go and,
Yeah.
begin outlining a book that I've wanted to do for a long time that I thought was going to be more of a business angle, but I think it's going to be more simplistic and, just helping others understand that, there's good and bad to every culture, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. hmm
I'm excited because there was something that I came across yesterday, and I probably, like you, am just doing so much, reading about so many different things, and sometimes something sort of gets into your view, and you sort of go down a rabbit hole and learn about something. So yesterday I was reading, I believe it was CNN, and there was something about a photographer that what she does is she goes around the world and she photographs different people, and she got famous for, I believe, photographing some people in Africa. But what she does is she doesn't sort of documentary style take pictures of these people. She puts them in these fantastical situations and takes these stunning photographs. And the reason that I was drawn to it is because there were a couple of photographs about Tahiti. And
hmm
I have a connection to Tahiti because it's where I went on my honeymoon back in 1995, and it will always remain, this place for me that was both beautiful and tragic, because when my husband and I were there was nuclear testing that was going on in French Polynesia, and we actually got stuck there and caught there, and we saw some tragic things that happened. That's why I was sort of drawn to it, not because of the photography, but rather because they spoke about Tahiti. And the picture was not just about the Tahitian people. It was more about this third gender that is recognized and given a lot of, I'm trying to think of the word, like reverence in their culture. It's this third gender. And I believe, and I don't want to get this wrong, but I believe that it's called Mahu. And so this third gender is just something that people recognize as truly special. And what this photographer did is she sort of put these people again in these like fantastical, like beautiful backdrops and all of this. And she took photos to really bring out their beauty. And I know about Tahiti. I was on my honeymoon in Tahiti. We learned about the people because we were stuck there. And this is something that 25 years later, I never knew about this third gender and what that was all about. And to me, it sort of slapped me in the face with, you never know about these cultures and what they find is part of their culture and everything. So I just thought that it was super interesting. And I thought that you would be interested in that as well, from a creative perspective, but also from a cultural perspective.
Well, that's just another person, trying to help us understand exactly what you were learning as you were there, in her own way. I think that's why also art is very important, because it's just another form of expression that can be very cultural. I'm listening right now to one of the master classes, which I love. Have listened to many, and today began the journey of listening to Annie Leibovitz, and
Mm.
just seeing what she's done over the years and the beauty of the story that she tries to tell, mostly just through Americans and famous people, but just the culture that lives just within what she does, for example. in studying her subject so closely and not being happy with something, and maybe months or even a year later going back and saying, you know what, I kept thinking about a certain shot and realized that it wasn't really you culturally, and I want to come back and redo it. Um,
Mm,
so she, as an artist, it has put forth an obligation to really help us understand people, on such a more simplistic level. And she herself and her style, I'm learning, is very simplistic. And I love that because I don't think, even if we're a master in our field, that it has to be so complicated in telling a story, and you obviously, I'm sure, are familiar with her work. She's very famous, has put out some brilliant stuff because she takes the time to get to know her subjects. And I think that's
mm,
where we as human beings need to go next. I think, we're so busy in our lives and we don't sit to smell the roses. We don't sit next to a stranger and just strike up conversations enough because we're always in a hurry. We're always on the go. We might not like the way somebody looks. They might look angry as they're sitting on the subway. But I think that if we do take the time to do those things, like Annie Leibovitz, we'll see that there is a lot of beauty behind many people, regardless of who they are, what they do for a living, where they come from. I just think that there's just this forced fear of the unknown, and there's really no reason for it. And hey, maybe some bad things have happened to you or whomever based on somebody from a different culture, but we shouldn't rule out getting around fear, and trying again to get to know people, even if they're not from a different culture, even if we just started there and learn how to embrace in a world that today we can't embrace, right? We have to do elbow to elbow, ankle to ankle hellos nowadays. And maybe that'll carry
yeah.
on for a while, but at least, we have eyes, we have a voice, we have ears to listen. I think we need to come back to much more simplicity. You and I talk about how the world is being shaken, shaken down, weeded out. We see a lot of us being weeded out now. We don't know why. We don't understand why. Why is this affecting so many seniors? That's a culture unto itself. Something that the
Hmm.
world should not stand to lose. We need that wisdom. We shouldn't have viruses that are killing our elderly. So, there's just so many pieces to it that go so far beyond cultures that, when I speak of culture, I don't always mean somebody who's come from a different country, and our
Yeah.
conversation only went that way because of China and the coronavirus. But anything can happen, right?
Right. You're so
Hmm.
right. You're so right. There's,
Yeah.
there's the culture of even the town that I live in Long Island. It's this very irreverent, creative, musical, artistic community. It's also a bubble.
Hmm.
And, anybody that sort of comes into it can see what that's all about. But that's also very different than the culture of Long Island and then New York and then the East Coast. I mean, these are all different, regional differences and even family differences. The people that we know in common, it's a wide spectrum of just these like subcultures of families. It's absolutely fascinating. And again, it's like, yes, there are so many differences and then there are so many commonalities and there's so much at the core. And I think the thing that, you're very educated, you're very open-minded. There's not a lot of people out there that are like you. In fact, I would say that the majority of people, I wouldn't say the majority. There's a good amount of people that are not educated. They're ignorant to, I'm not saying they're dumb. They're ignorant to this way of thinking. For those people, for people that are educated, this makes a lot of sense, right? Like open your mind, talk to people, have a conversation with someone, learn about who they are, get your head out of the phone. What about people that are closed-minded and afraid What would you say to somebody like that says, I don't want to learn about anybody except for me because I don't want their crap getting in my world. What
Well,
would you say to someone like that?
again, it's based on fear, it's based on the unknown. I think the only way we're going to get around that is putting more content out there and just letting it be out there. I mean, you can't force somebody to like Polish people, or Russian people. I think it's just a matter of helping this world understand on a more simplistic and although sophisticated level, and that's just putting content out there, and is it storytelling? Is it photography? Is it art? Is it music? This world is so globalized now where, any of us can start a YouTube channel, and many of us, if we work hard enough, can figure out how to do a podcast. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think that, anybody today can kind of have a voice. Maybe we
Yeah.
encourage more people from around the world to have a voice globally,
Yes.
to just simply share, especially now where we kind of can't go anywhere and go to baseball games and go to restaurants and go to the library and go to the dry cleaners or wherever we need to go during the day. Maybe this quiet time is the time for people to have a broader voice and stronger voice to talk about who they are. I think that
Yeah.
there's a lot of silly stuff that gets so many views on Instagram or YouTube. I think it's up to people like us to tell the story of what is so special about somebody who comes from Ecuador or somebody who is an American who lives here in the U.S. but whose parents might be from Ecuador. How do you showcase those differences and showcase those similarities to say that, what, regardless of where I've come from in the world, I'm really just like you. I'm a human being. I have a voice. I have the same goals and dreams of bettering myself and hopefully some dreams of bettering the world and making it a better place. And I personally believe that's why God gives us all talents, and it's up to us to go find them and share with others. Versus almost thinking thinking of it as a crime not to put your talents out there, because I think
Yeah.
that's why we're given talents, so that we can figure out how do we go out there to have others better understand us and who we are and where we're from, and alleviate fear. They say the best way into heaven, if you believe in heaven, some of us do, some of us don't, but is to be kind to others. You see a lot of celebrities out there showcasing be kind to others. Ellen DeGeneres is all about that. Make the world a better place just by being kind, regardless if you do or don't like the way somebody looks. So I keep going back to the basics, that it's the only way that I think we're going to be able to turn our world around, to appreciate things that we're buying that do come from different countries and not just always being from your own original country. I think that this world can be saved from coronavirus, and that we can learn to appreciate and enjoy things from all over the world and be able to purchase anywhere in the world because we can. It is so global now.
Yeah.
So I again think that we have to just continually educate ourselves and keep an open mind. And for those that don't, find a way to quietly bring them along. It's not an easy thing. Things like racism has been around for, God, I'm sure generations upon generations upon generations, and people have died fighting for that cause of, hey, better understand us and let's erase racism. But it takes time, and it might take many generations beyond us. But I think, we can start here and, just really trying to make an impact to better understand ultimately.
That is so beautifully said. And it just makes me want for you so bad to have your own podcast where you're showcasing all of these different people and cultures and having all of these different conversations. I mean, I think that you're right. That's sort of the only way to get people to kind of tune in to their fear and to get past it, is by putting out this incredible, diverse type of content, whether it's through podcasting or photography or, beautiful objects or art or whatever it is. So I hope that you get your book out quickly. I hope that there's opportunities for you to travel around the world and talk, to different people, travel around the United States and talk to people and to get your voice out there. And it is one of the things that I'm super passionate about with She Leads Media. It's giving voice to people like you who are truly doing something great in the world. And you don't need to be a movie star or a superstar or an Instagram influencer. You can start from being just a multi-passionate, super passionate person that has something really relevant to say, and that is not coded in, bullcrap. It's let's stop sugarcoating the fact that there's racism, and let's do something about it. We don't have to go head on with it. We can be really subtle, like you're talking about. But yeah, that's definitely what the mission of She Leads is, and what I would love to see from you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my challenge to you. Get out there, because your message is one that definitely needs to be heard by a lot of people. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
One more thing, just in listening, look at all the rappers that are out there. There's so many rappers out there that if you carefully listen to their music, they are telling the story. They are putting out their challenges out there. I don't particularly love rap, but when I do have an opportunity to sit and really listen to the words, there already are people beyond me trying to tell that story. And I think we have to first start with listening. And yes, I will definitely continue my journey going from country to country to country, and have been to many countries already, and I'm starting to document the beautiful things within each, as I'm sure many other people before me already are doing as I speak. But this is the transition. This is the journey to figure out, where to live next, where to travel next, what food to eat next, what music to enjoy next, what art to take in. I can just envision in having an environment, which I've already built in one home, but now I'm transitioning, is just everywhere you look around, there's a piece from somewhere else. There's a piece that you can admire and have a great memory that you've been there and that you saw with your own eyes. I think that will be the journey. And the next time I come on this show, I will definitely share with you some very concrete examples of where I've been and where I'm going. And I do have an Instagram called Culturally Cognizant that I hope people will take a look at, and would love to hear feedback of more things that they'd like to see and hear and share with me, and so we can continue the journey for sure.
Amazing. And where else can they find you besides on your Instagram? Do you have a website or anything else that you'd like people to kind of, check out?
I do have a blog called culturallycognizant.com. So that's where I'm at right now. And that's being reworked as we speak, but really trying to take all the pieces that I've had from another company and roll it more into for the masses, where before what I did through my company, JGS, is target more businesses in terms of how do you prepare to deal with cross-cultural differences in your business. And now I'm transitioning not only personal life, but in this journey of writing more for the masses, especially as things like the coronavirus happen today, that I feel is my path and my journey to really just help tell the story overall and not through a corporate business sense. So that's where you can find me today. Yes.
I love it. Great. Awesome. Well, Julianna, thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation, beautiful. And I definitely want to have you come back on the show, and you can tell us more about maybe some of the people that you've met and some of the places that you've been. And, you and I are connected, so I'll know everything along the way. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was truly wonderful.
Thank you. Can't wait to hear it. And thanks for putting together shows like Sugar Coated, because I think this is the opportunity. The world is out there to speak our mind, and gosh darn it, we need to do it. So thank you.
Hell yeah. See you soon.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. This is the She Leads Podcast Network.